What's up, guys? Welcome to What the Freak. Today, I am super stoked to have my boy Adi or Adionai. How do you prefer to be called in this moment?
Adi or Adionai?
Adionai.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. I'll probably go with Adi.
Yep.
Sweet. Great to have you here, brother. I've known this brother for over a year now, at least. And we actually met through one of my good friends, both of our good friends, Michael Hrastowski.
Shouts out, Michael.
What's up, dude? Through my freestyle rap group that I created called Creative Dojo. And he's an amazing flow artist of life, DJ, man of many talents. Welcome to the show. We'd love to give you the opportunity to just introduce yourself, say a couple things about yourself, and then we can dive in.
Right on. Thanks so much for having me here, brother. So good to be here.
Hell yeah.
My name is Adi, and I was born in Israel, moved to the States, to Palo Alto, California. Experienced a lot of sense of isolation and disconnection and depression and anxiety and all those feelings that make you feel like you're just on the wrong planet. Like maybe I'll never be understood. Maybe I'll never be seen. Maybe I'll never feel at home, because my spirit was always very much out of the box, very artistic, very creative. And the culture that I found myself in growing up in Palo Alto, which is the Silicon Valley, the heart of the Silicon Valley, the heart of the culture of Apple and Facebook and Google, as that was all booming. My generation was kind of like the guinea pig test dummy generation for what's it like when a child grows up with all these things that today seem very much ordinary. They're ordinary addictions, but that are a brand new experience for us to kind of test out what happens to a human being under these circumstances. And in those circumstances, I found a culture of hyperconformity that wasn't reflecting spaciousness for my soul to blossom in, which led me inwards into the shadows of all the shit that was coming up during that time, led me inwards, started to wake up to what exists outside of the box, started getting into things that might be called more spiritual, and really living life on my own sovereign terms. And since then, I've been devoted to showing that way for others who need that support, need that reflection, need that hope to know that it's possible to be yourself in this world, that you don't have to conform. And that there are people that are out there that are experiencing the levels of disconnection and isolation and hopelessness that you are. They're just not talking about it. They're just not showing it. And there's a way to actually unwind that conditioning, to hold it in and to change ourselves into something else. So I've been on a journey of uncovering what that looks like for me. And what that looks like for me these days is I'm a spiritual coach / mentor / what I call evolutionary guide. Working one-on-one with people. I facilitate workshops and cacao ceremonies and song circles, and I DJ ecstatic dances and guide people through movement, through embodying their soul, through movement, all kinds of events, all kinds of gatherings, all kinds of workshops. And yeah, I'm a musician, I'm a rapper, I'm a freestyle artist, as you were talking about a little bit before. And yeah, just in general, an artist in service to this cultural renaissance that we're at, of really bringing through more of the soul that's been suppressed in humanity to help to reflect to the world more possibilities and reminders of what is available to us at this time behind the scenes of what culture is selling to us on the surface level, and just inspiring everyone to go deeper and bring forth that depth of who they are to co-create a more beautiful, harmonious, and liberated world, starting from that realization and connection within.
Wow, beautiful.
It's a bit of the summary.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, it's so good having you here, and I'm excited to dive in more about a couple of things you just shared about. One of them, and I think the first one I'd love to go to is, you talk about we're kind of coming into this new place as a species. There's, I think you said something along the lines of, bringing more of our soul that's been buried or hidden to the forefront, rediscovering that, uncovering that. And we're in just such a unique time right now. It's the beginning of 2022. And we're coming up on our 2-year anniversary of when everything shut down for COVID here in the U.S. Nice. And, it feels like there's the tides are shifting, or like there's something's changing right now. And I'm curious to hear, one, what is your current read of where we're at kind of energetically as a society? And then two, what possibilities or opportunities are available or becoming available for us at this unique time?
Such a deep question. Thank you.
I thought we'd just jump off the diving board in the deep end to start.
Where else is there to go?
Yeah.
But right here. Yeah, I think to me, just the numbers, the word 2022 is really exciting. I think we're at a point in between two worlds. The old world, if you want to call it, and the new world, or the new earth. I think we're right at the heart of it. Like you said, let's get right to the heart of it. Let's the depth of it. I think we're at a place where the opportunity is fully here and available for us to uncover who it is we are as a humanity and create a world that is based around that fundamental essence within all of us, which cannot be captured or contained by the cultural explanations and definitions and systems and institutions that have led us to this point here and now, that the Western world as we know it is built upon. So I think we're in a point of apocalypse. I think we're in a point of the breaking down of everything we've known to define our sense of civilization and society, and the breaking down of normal. And I think at the same time, it's an apocalypse in a holistic lens, not in a lens that demonizes death, but in a lens that understands that death is a process that is imbued in the essence of how life continues to rebirth itself into greater evolution and expansion, like a metamorphosis. So we're kind of like in the cocoon phase of a butterfly's journey. And yeah, I think this is an incubation right now where we're in a melting pot, thanks to the rise of technology and science, where we have all these amazing tools and infinite opportunities imbued and kept dormant for all these ages within humans that are now being exposed and brought to the surface to be available, to be made conscious and be understood and be integrated by the collective at large. So this is an opportunity to really have access to more information and more wisdom and more resource than ever before. Opportunity for the whole human collective to actually come together and share and find harmony finally. Find a way that everything synergizes and works together, and come out of all these years of believing we're separate, and all these years of fighting each other, and all these years of relating to the planet and to the web of life as if it's something to extract or take from or to harm. And so I see this as a time of great awakening. I see it as the time of coming to terms with all that's been suppressed within humanity up to now, all that's been unconscious, and in that process, making conscious what needs to be seen, what needs to be realized in order for humanity to actualize our full potential and take the big evolutionary leap that has been coming since the dawn of time and that civilization has been striving for. I think we're at the jump-off point, truly, where we have everything we need to create the world that is beyond our dreams, beyond what we can perceive or conceive, for how profound it's going to be. And I think we're at the time where all the concepts that we have of how the world should be or how life should be that are in the way of that infinite unfolding through the unknown, beyond what we've known, all those concepts are beginning to break down. And so we're in a time of crisis for the human ego, which is in this emergency for the human ego.
Thank God, right?
Yeah, it's the emergence of the soul. And yeah, there's many layers we can talk to about that. But I think we're at a 0 point of infinite potential and possibility to know ourselves and actualize ourselves as creation, and take power back by realizing that we are imbued with infinite creative potential and opportunity right now to really live life sovereignly, freely. And yeah, we're at a time where we're being called to get really serious about the urgency, because shit is going to hit the fan a lot more, I think, than we've already seen even thus far. And it's going to challenge our creativity. It's going to stretch our capacity to wake up to what it means to be alive today and what we are choosing to focus our energy on. And yeah, how we're really exercising the gift of being alive. And it's going to force us to really live. I think we're in a time of great adventure and excitement, the likes of which we have never yet seen, and which will be forever looked back upon by the history books as that moment where it was like, whoa, what did they do with all odds stacked against them and all this crazy humanness from all these different angles and people and cultures flying all over the place? How did they come together within themselves and integrate this world that seemed at odds with itself, integrate it into one of symbiosis?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So how does that happen? How do we, because like I so much resonate with everything that you just shared, and
shit's getting real. That's where we're at.
Yeah, shit is real.
We're at the there's a meme that's like, we've been in the fuck around stage and now we're at the find out stage of humanity. Like the fuck around and find out. So it's like shit's getting real.
We are finding out what happens.
We're finding out about the fuckery. Yeah.
So you are here. Shit is getting real.
Yeah. We can't run away from our shit. We have to face all the shit now. And it's compost. It's good shit.
Yeah, it's like making nutrient-rich soil.
So we get there by accepting the darkness and accepting the challenge as the perfect climate for opportunity. Accepting the shit as compost for new growth.
Since we were just talking about memes, I have to give a quick shout out to your meme page. You run one of my absolute favorite meme pages. Sacred Meme Stash. We'll link it in the notes.
Out.
Just wanted to shout it out because it's been very soul-soothing and healing and transformative for me to experience your beautiful curation and creation of spiritual memes that really connect with my soul. So I just wanted to share that with the audience real quick.
Thanks, bro.
Definitely check it out. I think you just broke, 1,000 followers or about to or something?
They've gone down to 999.
Okay.
But I'm grateful that whoever's not feeling it's not there, and
That's a great
999
number.
is a sacred number.
999 is a beautiful
Yeah.
number. Well, you could be number 1,000.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe you'll win a prize, maybe not.
Yeah.
No promises. But.
Hey, I'll shout you out.
But yeah, so I love the piece you're just touching on, which is this acceptance, right? So if we're in this metamorphosis process, which I definitely resonate with, and if we are, moving towards becoming a butterfly, in order to become that butterfly, which is already, being created, born, emerging from that cocoon, we have to shed that cocoon eventually, right? So it's like, what does that look like? How do I accept what is unfolding right now more fully? Because I think it's, for myself, and I'm sure for a lot of people, it's been very challenging sometimes to accept what's going on in the world because it seems so bad and it seems so uncomfortable and unfair in a lot of ways. And there just seems to be, at the very least, a lot of pain and suffering coming to the surface and being seen and expressed and felt. So what is maybe like one or two things you'd say about like how does one achieve a deeper level of acceptance in a time like this?
Yeah. Well, yeah, like the analogies of the shit and of the butterfly are so important because we have to understand that this is all a process of nature. This is what nature is designed to do. Nature decomposes and recomposes. Nature dies and rebirths, and it's just one big nature evolving through these cycles of death and rebirth. And so we have to begin to see ourselves as nature, and we have to see that how we relate to the world outside or is not really in alignment with nature if we are believing that the world outside is something separate from us. So given that we are nature, our duty is now to do the work within ourselves, because how we relate to the world outside is how we relate to ourselves, because it's just one natural being relating to itself here. And so any relationship we have or anything that we have outside of us is actually just within our own consciousness. And so when we learn to come to terms with our own self and accept ourselves and learn to work with our emotions without resisting them or judging them as something separate, in the same way that we cannot resist and judge as separate or other things that we see in the world. So it's not constructive to point at the world and say, oh my God, this is fucked, or that's fucked, or that's bad, or that's to blame. Anything, because that creates more of an energy of pain and of suffering, because it's a projection of our own lack of connection to ourselves and lack of peace and harmony with ourselves. So it all starts with coming into peace and harmony with ourselves, because the world and how we've gotten to here at this point has been the projection of pain that we see in the world has been a manifestation of people's lack of connection, embodied connection to their own self. And so that's projected outside, projected at a seeming other. And so the way we reverse that is through coming back to ourselves, no longer making the world wrong or bad, and no longer making processes of difficulty or challenge bad, but understanding them as processes of evolution, as processes of, death and rebirth, like diamonds birthing under the pressure, like butterflies birthing under the death and the dissolving in the darkness of the cocoon, like the morning coming after the night. So, going inwards and taking self-responsibility at this time for being the very consciousness through which the world is created. So when we're busy pointing our fingers outside and we're trying to fight the world, then we are leaking our energy that we can use to actually create the world we want to see. And so then we're creating more of that energy of fighting and separation. So the trick is to take our mind back from all the things outside that we want to be triggered by and want to blame as being wrong, and see that by doing that, we're wasting the most precious commodity that this world has in order to improve, which is the true presence of each individual creating authentically from their heart. And so what is important is that we all begin to accept that destruction is a process necessary for new creation to happen, and see this opportunity of what all the shadows in the world, of what we don't like or what we don't prefer or what don't resonate with us, as being beautiful gifts for our learning as a collective and as consciousness, and for seeing what we do not wish to choose to create more of. So thank you for showing me what I don't wish to create more of. Thank you so much. Now I'm wiser. Now I'm more clear on what I actually do want to create. Now I have more awareness of the infinite potential of things that can be created to work with. So all the darkness that we've created has been an exploration of consciousness, seeing all that it can create. And now that we've uncovered the dark stuff that we can create, the stuff that we can create when we forget that we're connected to creation, that we forget that we're the creator. Now that we've uncovered that, that gives us the perfect fertile ground or compost to now know what we do want to create. So thank you for showing me the shadows. Thank you for all the people doing that beautiful work to excavate the shadows of our potential, so we can know our full creative potential for what we can create when we're not aware that we are one with all of creation, and for giving us the awareness of now what we wish to create more of. And that's part of accepting it, that it's all in service to something, and that everything is useful. There's nothing to resist, because all of creation is, nothing is a mistake in nature. Everything is somehow serving itself, and we have to apply that to the level of human consciousness on a collective level. Everything is of service. Everything can be processed and digested as medicine, as wisdom, as seeds that bring through new creations, new awareness. So not throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah, I'm hearing what you're saying, and one thing I'm curious about is, so, I definitely generally agree with what you just shared, and I think it's a very needed approach compared to what we've been seeing. But one thing I'm curious about is, how do we reconcile, for example, if there's some type of, let's say, domestic abuse happening in household, how do we not say that's fucked? And so, there's this kind of weird thing, right, where it's yes, everything is happening for a reason. Yes, it's to show us, what we don't want to see, but that's happening. So it's I don't know how I could not say that that's kind of fucked, that that's happening. You know what I mean? So it's and yet I do agree, though, that I don't want to resist what is happening, or I don't know. I'm trying to come into there's two sides of this. One is definitely, thank you for showing me how not to act, and let me show up in a different way.
Right.
But then what do we do about the effed stuff that's still happening? How do I reconcile that? Because it seems in the long run, at least, going within and just becoming more of who I want to see in the world and the qualities I want to see in the world seems like the solution in the long run. But how do we handle all the fucked up shit that's happening right now that is just kind of fucked up?
Yeah. Well, we do what inspires us. We address what feels called to be addressed from a place of creative inspiration. If something that troubles us in the world is calling to us to do something about it, then that should be, what we go after, and let inspire us to create, a better situation, rather than let us defeat ourselves in a sense of cynicism. Basically, I love how optimistic you are about this time too. And we have to be both optimistic and practical, but they have to go together. Being optimistic is the most practical thing you could do, because it keeps you open to the possibilities of how to work with what is practically here. And so I think it's important to note how domestic abuse, for example, or other things that are violent, are today, we are as a collective more of a fuck that to that than we've been in the past. So there's a steady exponential increase of the human heart sensitivity to things that are disrespectful to the human heart. That's really bringing rates of that down and bringing more awareness to these topics that in the past were completely normal. Oh yeah, you beat your wife? Cool, good. That used to be a thing. So I think it's important to know that is going to die out, and we're just in this awkward in-between phase between like, all right, how do we deal with all these things? And so being optimistic is helpful, because it allows us to move with the momentum of the evolution that's happening, rather than be contracted into some like, oh no, this is too much, and become apathetic or become disabled from our ability to actually ride the inspiration and the momentum awakening through the human heart that's saying, I want to do something about this. But let it come from a creative place, and also just for the sake of the point of the external reflecting the internal. As you're going to do this work, check in with the symbol of domestic abuse and how that might be happening within oneself, whether one is beating up on oneself within one's own temple, within one's own home of one's beingness. Are we beating ourselves up? Because once we can clean that up and figure out the dynamics within us where that is being passed down through the lineages and through the collective consciousness internally, when we can figure that out and make true peace within, in our own home, in our own inner home, and then
in our own bodies.
Yeah, in our own bodies, psyches, and then in our own physical home, is when we can do that in the world more efficiently. Because the understanding of peace is it's a way of being an embodiment that comes in parts no longer believing themselves to be separate, and being realizing unity and harmony. And so that's not believing that there's anything separate or in conflict within us. And so I only say that because that's an important piece, which is that we're trying to often clean up the world's ecosystem without first cleaning up our own closet and our own skeletons.
Yeah. I love that. Two things I really heard in that I want to reflect back. One is, I think you're really touching in on this concept of a problem can't be solved at the level of consciousness that it was created at, right?
Yep.
So I really heard a lot of that in what you were just sharing. And kind of the other analogy that was coming through as you're speaking is, sometimes it's actually the most effective. We can be most effective when we actually pause and take a step back and go sharpen our saw a bit more, sharpen our axe a bit more, rather than just continuing to try to hack at the thing over and over and over again, and only really hacking away at the branches. Like, if that axe is not sharp enough to even try and get at the root of it. And I feel like that's a lot of what I've been doing the last year or two. When the pandemic first hit, I got very into like, oh my God, like, what can I do right now? And like, and then social justice issues and like trying to be a part of the solution. But at some point I had to just take a step back, because I'm like, something about all of this just doesn't feel right. And I feel like I can't actually be of service here. right now. And so I felt a lot of guilt about that at first, right? Like, I'm taking a step back. Does that mean I don't care? And I knew the answer was no, like definitely that's not the truth. I care deeply. And yet I didn't actually feel prepared to be a part of the solution because I was so in the mix of the jumbled mess of the noise and the chaos and everything that I couldn't actually be a good anchor. I couldn't actually be of service in the way that I truly desired to be and that was actually being called for. Yeah. And so I've actually had to just take a step back and really, be patient and sharpen my axe. And now I more and more do feel more prepared to address certain types of issues because I've taken that time to get right with myself and to go deeper in myself and to really heal and transform those pieces of myself such that I can show up in a much more effective and useful way. Right. So I really appreciate the perspective that you're sharing. And it's also like instead of fighting against something, right? It's like, maybe if something is within your field, like you are called to step in and at least stop the bleeding. Like if you know that some type of abuse is happening in your friend or family circle and you feel that you are prepared to be the one that might need to step in and be like, hey, like, let's talk about this, or hey, like this needs to stop. Maybe you're called to that. Maybe not. Maybe that's not even your place and that doesn't feel in alignment. But I think overall, just continuing to fight against a thing, like I feel like we as humans have tried that for so long. Like we're fighting cancer, we're fighting the war on drugs, we're fighting
the virus.
It's like at some point you have to take a step back and be like, what are we actually pouring our energy into? And what are we actually creating and perpetuating? Yeah. And are there incentives to continue the fight?
Yeah, what are we, and it's where are we creating from? Are we creating from an energy of fighting, or are we creating from an energy of peace? That determines the outcome. And that's why it's so beautiful to take a step back, because it's like, oh, what am I creating in the world? You can know we've created a world that's dissociated from the deeper being. So it's in conflict with itself. It's a doing and doing and doing without a being. But once the being is brought, we come back to our beingness, that then what we do in the world can be imbued with the deeper wisdom of our being and thus serve the beingness of others. But if we're getting ahead of ourselves and trying to do things without checking in on where we're actually coming from, we're going to be creating more dissociation, creating more disconnection. And there's the beautiful quote that goes with this whole thing, which is the secret of change. Socrates said the secret of change is to focus all the energy on building the new rather than fighting the old. And so it's a beautiful thing to see something that is an old way, the old way of fighting, the old way of violence, and to be inspired to go there, to be inspired to do something about that. But just check in with yourself whether you are, like, where your energy's at. What are you creating more of? Like, what are you bringing to the table? Are you bringing the new? Are you bringing peace? Are you bringing love? Are you bringing kindness? Or are you perpetuating the old by trying to fight the old? Are you trying to fight fire with fire? Are you trying to fight the fighting? Or are you trying to create the peace?
Yeah. Are you showing up to win the battle for your own self-righteous reasons, no matter how well justified?
Or to prove that you're justified?
Yeah. It's I think in a situation like that, when I get an energetic read on that kind of energy and intention, it's coming from this place that like that person hasn't explored deep enough within themselves or developed enough empathy and understanding and compassion and connection with a bigger vision of what humanity could be. And therefore, they are so in their whole story, maybe even a whole collective story, whether that's like a nation against a nation, and this nation feels like this nation has wronged us, or they believe all the wrong things. We must, for the sake of all the beings that we care about, destroy this other nation or be victorious. Otherwise, evil will take over the world. And sure enough, this other side is thinking the same thing, right? They're on the right path, and this other is wrong in some way. And they're just simply an other rather than another us. They're dehumanized in a way. And so literally there's just this constant energy that will never go away. It doesn't matter who wins the battle, like that consciousness will continue to perpetuate it until someone steps in as a peace bringer, until someone steps in and says, I'm not here for either side. I'm here for the greater thing.
Yep.
I'm here for both of you, and I'm here to create understanding. I'm here to bring curiosity. I'm here to bring deeper connection, and I'm here to fight not against someone or something, but for a new way of being. And I love that you made that distinction between doing and being, because when you're coming from just that place of doing, which is typically like disconnected from our heart and our soul, you're going to just keep going over and over again.
Keep creating more of the mess that got us here.
Exactly. The chaos continues, yet when you're coming from a place of being, like being is a much deeper, more powerful
It's where the doing comes from.
place.
It's the source of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when I'm here to be in the energy of peace, or I'm here to be in the energy of perfect health, that's a much different energy than I'm here to destroy this virus. It'll just keep coming back over and over and over again until our focus shifts to being in good health.
Right.
There's much different actions that are taken when we're showing up from that level of that energy of being in perfect health. Like if that's my ultimate goal, to be in perfect health, I would start to question entire industries and where they've gone, and much respect to each person working a job that's work for years to create a specialized skill set, and what wall is our ladder leaning against? What energy are we actually pouring into it? And maybe at some point long ago, let's say the pharmaceutical industry was rooted in trying to create better health of some kind. Clearly, that's not what's happening now, and that's not actually what they're bringing to the world. They're here to combat disease and perpetuate disease. And
Hold up, let me combat you for saying something.
Combat me. Go.
I'm just kidding.
Oh.
Because that's what I feel like a lot of people are probably feeling as soon as you're saying something challenging.
Oh, yeah.
The desire is suddenly to shut you down and to combat you and to fight you, rather than to figure out where we can meet halfway, rather than to figure out how to integrate. Because healing actually means to make whole. Healing means to bring together parts that are in opposition. So to bring healing to the body is to bring the body into cohesiveness with itself, and to bring healing to the world now is to bring different cells, different parts of the body into communication, positive communication with each other, so that energy and love and resource can flow beautifully. And so it's such a beautiful point that we have been seeing the world and addressing everything from a militarized perspective, from a war perspective. This is what creates violence in the world. This is what creates dis-ease, is this energy of being against something, which is always against oneself, because we all share the same planet. So one point I just want to sidetrack on is to think more in the terms of long term is necessary at this time, because right now it might seem like I am separate from you, but in the long term, in the true bigger perspective, we are the earth together. We will come back to the earth together, and our children will grow in a place, or our grandchildren's children's children will grow in a place that is completely affected by what I did to you today, by what I did to your family, to your tribe, to your nation. All these things leave an effect on this one planet that we share. It's not like I'm doing something to you and there's like this screen between us and you exist in a different, like we actually share the same environment. We share this. So what I do to you sends ripples and affects reality, affects nature, and eventually comes back around to myself. Even if I don't have the capacity to experience that in this life, my grandchildren's children will feel that in some way. And so we have to take a step back, right? And in order to bring a world that's actually healthy, that's actually whole, that's actually thriving, we have to come back and begin to make sure that our piece in it is whole and is healthy and thriving. And we have to kind of step back from the doing, come into the being, because what makes us sick, what makes us want to mentally sick, at least, if not, and eventually translates into physical sickness, as we know, as science is showing us, is this disconnection from our deeper being. We're going at a pace that is not connected to the true beingness and pace of nature and of our beings. We're trying to outdo ourselves over and over again, this constant outdoing and battling and gotta that energy, we're doing that to ourselves. We can't outdo because there's nothing outside to do. And so all this doing is affecting our being when it's not in service to a deeper sense of being and wellness and health within us. So we have to approach life collectively on a grander scale, whatever the example is, from a place of healing now, which is the opposite of fighting, and yet somehow still doesn't demonize fighting because destruction is a part of creation, but integrates it, because that's what healing is. Healing is the bringing together and bringing cohesiveness of different parts and seeing them all, how they all flow and work together. So we're really being asked to listen to and become curious about every little thing, every single person's perspective, even if it doesn't quite match our own, and figure out a way to find harmony in between all of that, and figure out a way to drop deeper into our being together, because health is actually much simpler than we make it. We just don't give ourselves a chance to be in the energy of healing when we're always out there trying to fight something. We know how fear affects our state of well-being, our state of emotional well-being and integrity, and affects our body. This is scientifically proven what the mind does to the body. This is no longer just superstition. This is, we are designed to live in coherence. Our body is a part of nature. It's designed to live in resonance with nature. So when it starts to live out of balance with nature, with its true natural self, it experiences dis-ease. And that is still an opportunity to grow into greater health. That dis-ease, that darkness is something to be celebrated, because nature is so intelligent beyond our mind, because our mind is a product of nature. Our doing is a product of a being. Our body is a product of the greater body of the earth. So to come all the way back to the deeper source from which everything is a manifestation of, is to realize that there is something much smarter and greater that uses everything, like we said earlier, composts everything as part of a greater process of unfoldment. And so we can celebrate, I just want to touch on this piece too, we can celebrate when we are aware of things that are disharmonious or violent in the world, because the fact of our awareness being there means it's no longer unconscious, means it's being addressed, it's being integrated into the body of knowledge that we all share. And from that, we are learning to work with it. And naturally, it's evolving and it's changing into something new. It's being brought awareness to, because violence and dis-ease is a byproduct of a lack of consciousness and awareness, which is what we fundamentally are made of. fully meeting and being there with itself. So life out there, the violence of the world out there, is a reflection of the split where we are unconscious of places where we are ostracizing, we are being violent to ourselves, and that place within us is contracting. That place within us is being beaten, and we're not being fully aware. The light of our own consciousness is not fully illuminating the fullness of our potential. So everything is a learning experience. Everything is coming back into awareness, is rising into higher forms of health and of evolution. We're designed to grow, to learn from what doesn't work into what does work. This is what nature does. It's constantly self-informing and evolving. And so we can celebrate when something comes to our awareness that seems to not be in service to that, because the fact that it's coming into our awareness means it's coming back into integration. It's being metamorphosized into a more whole, more healed aspect of itself if we give it that presence, if we give it that pure beingness without trying to fight it or control it or push it away. But if we let it be welcome in that ecosystem of wholeness within us, we can see how it's a messenger of service and how it's informing us of a deeper need of belonging and of wholeness. Everything has a need to be in belonging and wholeness. When it loses touch with the sense of wholeness and unity, then it loses the resource of life that gives life to it. It loses its connection to the life that flows through it. So we're designed to thrive in community all together as a collective, because in truth we are one. And so that's why the most important thing we can do to get to that place collectively is to realize that internally, spiritually, so we can make ourselves available to that experience externally. And so that's why that experience of unity on a beingness level, of just feeling that we're already whole, already enough, even with whatever shit is going on in our lives, even with whatever shit we want to project is going on out there, that's taking away from our peace, that's taking away from the goodness and perfection of this moment, we can embrace all of that as being a part of the unity. And then we can see how that actually affects the way that life moves through us and we move through life to create a world that reflects more of that unity externally. So in that state of consciousness of the resonance of unity, Dr. Joe Dispenza shows this, Bruce Lipton shows this with his work with epigenetics, how when there's that state of resonance and cohesiveness and unity, then the body actually has a chance to function. All the parts of our psyche have a chance to work together rather than fight each other. And we emanate that field, we function from that field, we do from a place where the do is not this in dissociation from the being, is not trying to run away from these negative things, is not trying to make these negative things, quote unquote, in the world go away, but is in a flow, in a dance with all of it, in a co-creative dance. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of. It's a creative opportunity where we have the most epic freaking material to co-create a new world. But we have to be willing to be okay with the more dark aspects of life as part of the creative alchemy, as part of the ingredients of creation. The destruction, the death, the darkness, the violence is part of the creative alchemy. And so we have to equally get real with that and integrate that part of ourselves in order for unity and cohesiveness to be reflected. So it's not a dissociative love and light thing that doesn't acknowledge the darkness in the world, but that accepts that it's a part of it and learns to work with that energy as part of a greater creative play into more harmony, more health, more healing, and not be so quick to push those things away, not be so quick to push away and judge these things as wrong, because there are teachings and wisdom there of life when we stay open to them, when we stay open to those things as being reflections of ourself, as being emanations of nature, of truth. There is wisdom to be found here that is crucial that we listen to rather than trying to get ahead of ourselves. But we have to really humble ourselves now to all that is here to learn from, so that we can make really integrated choices that are integrating all these different components of the human experience rather than missing what's there. We have to integrate. We have to make conscious these unconscious things. And that's why it's great that we're becoming more aware of what's dark in the world. That's why we should celebrate more that we're becoming aware of the darkness in the world more, rather than let it make us apathetic. Because it's there to inform us to make decisions that can be aware of what our potential is and what we wish to create in a more informed and cohesive and integrated and wholesome way that doesn't have as much room to waver and loop into where we've been looping because we haven't fully addressed it and been with it.
So I agree with all of that, and I think that's beautiful. I'm curious though, how does someone who has or is currently experiencing a lot of pain from the darkness? It's one thing to say, this is all a part of nature and the process. Totally, it is. We don't want to look away from it. Absolutely. But what happens when I'm personally experiencing that darkness in my own life? I'm experiencing the chaos and the violence of life. I'm experiencing trauma, or even just have experienced trauma, and my nervous system is reacting to that. And I'm stuck in these cycles. What can someone do to, because when I'm in that state, which I've been in many times, where it's like, I can hear everything you're saying and that makes sense to me. And there's a part of me that wants to say, fuck all of that in this moment because I'm in pain. Yeah. And the darkness is real. And I can't just accept that it's a part of life in this moment because I'm experiencing or have experienced a lot of trauma that is still very present in my body. So like, what are some ways that someone can move through that and come to a greater place of wholeness when they're like stuck in their body with either past or current trauma or pain that's occurring? Like how do we break that cycle? Or maybe like how have you for yourself broken some of those cycles so that you could actually authentically experience the world and nature in such a way that you described? Because I think that's beautiful, and I wish that upon everyone, that we can experience the world in that way, and I do believe that's where we're headed. But I also know there's probably a lot of people who are currently stuck in their traumas and their pain. So I'm curious to hear a little more on like what ways have you or could people break that pattern, break that energy so they can become more free from that.
Yeah. It's the same thing. Just it can sound esoteric and it can be applied on different scales of thought, but it's very practical and real. So it's just applying that principle of embracing everything as part of the unity. So I would say embracing the pain or embracing the fuck that. Like for me on my journey was a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort, and it was actually beginning to embrace that. That was my spiritual practice. That's the practice of turning in and coming face to face with our being, and because the unity doesn't exclude anything. So the places of pain and trauma are the places that believe that they're separate because they haven't been given the presence of attention, of loving consciousness and presence. They haven't been embraced by our own awareness. So I would say it's to embrace wherever we're at and whatever is there. And in so doing, that thing, begins to move. Begins to rather than be calcified, because that's when it the projection of violence on the world is the projection of calcified or contracted places of pain within us that are seeking quick escape through not looking there because we don't have the tools. We haven't been given the tools, but the tools can be as simple as learning to accept and learning to love rather than neglect those parts within us, rather than shame them, rather than guilt them, rather than fight them. Learning to be there and feel those feelings that weren't safe to feel when we were growing up in a world that was emotionally illiterate and not fluent in presence and in acceptance and in love. So bringing love to the parts that feel most unloving. And in that sense, knowing that love and peace and unity aren't one specific way of being. They're the beingness that holds all ways of being. So moving through the fuck that phase is important as well. Like the fuck that, fuck everything, fuck everyone. That's an important piece. A lot of times we're not given the chance to fully develop into our sovereignty and into our ability to actually do what our heart wants to do. We're being hijacked by things that our culture or our conditioning is doing through us. We're not actually doing what we actually want to do. No one actually, on the deepest core level of when you're fully present, no one actually wants to do harm to another person. So coming to that place where we can accept those parts of us and reclaim the parts of us, turning that energy of fuck that and fuck you, like letting that emotional process, rather than be projected externally at other people, holding space for that part in ourselves to be there and to move. Because often when we project that angry energy outside, it's actually an escape from feeling it truly. It's actually an escape from truly feeling the emotional process, and what's under that is often deep levels of grief, but we can't access that deeper reservoir of grief without moving through the anger or the power there too. So we're not just here to be very soft and vulnerable and compassionate. Love is also fierce, and love is also strong, and love is also sovereign. So when we can access that fuck that energy, like for me in my journey, there was a phase where I was learning to make peace with that fuck that energy, learning to make peace with that rage, learning to make peace with that suppressed power. And in so doing, I reclaimed my sovereignty, I reclaimed myself, cut the cords with everything in my reality that I was still feeding energy unconsciously to, redirected that fuck that energy. It's really an inside fuck that that's happening. It's a fuck that to any thought within me that's feeding energy to other people. It's disguised as fuck other people and fuck the world. But what you're really fucking, what you're really cutting through is your own, the loops in your own mind that keep you from knowing that true sovereignty, that keep you from being in your authentic energy and expression. So if everyone had a bit more authentic fuck that, and a bit more of that within themselves, then what's behind that, then it would be free to finally, oh, I have room to breathe now. I'm in my own fucking energy. And now, and then it's a lot easier to love, and a lot easier to bring compassion and peace and ease to the world, because that energy is designed to move. That fuck that energy, that anger, that darkness is designed to move. It's designed to flow. So expression can be a beautiful part of it, giving voice to it, like giving voice to it, and not giving voice to it because we need someone else to hear it and to receive it and to whatever. Fuck you, you fucking. It's like that can be helpful, but it can also be dangerous if we're doing it with an expectation that something outside of us needs to shift in order for us to feel that peace. But it's more so for the energy to move. And so it can be helpful to express those feelings. And I found that after really allowing myself to feel those feelings of like, fuck the world, like fuck everything, like coming back to myself, I don't have, like I look inside and it's not really there anymore. Like I'll try to like use those techniques sometimes when I'm like feeling a bit uncomfortable, of just like being like angsty or something, or like angry or irritable. And it's not an authentic resource anymore because it's already moved through. Now it's like, what is an authentic resource more is just like the beingness that was there to like pave the way for me to access underneath it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really relating to that in this moment. I think what you're touching on is really powerful. Yeah, like a previous partner, someone I dated, as we were transitioning out of that relationship, going through.
Thank you for asking that beautiful question, by the way.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
it's really good. I was
Bringing
feeling,
it home. Yeah.
I was feeling a lot of energy in my body, honestly, because I'm just so connected to the collective. I can just like,
Oh yeah, the
when
collective hates it when we talk
we
about
touch on certain topics, I'm just like, oh shit, feel activated in my body. Like there's really a thread here. So thank you
Right.
for going there
Yeah.
with me.
The
'cause I
darkness
think
doesn't want to be left out.
it's important to talk about these things
'Cause
and
it-
to actually verbalize them and even
Yeah.
use a few fuck yous, in a podcast, because there's an important thread here, because so much of our energy is suppressed. So much of our expression and our feelings are suppressed. And I love that you were talking about, what I heard one of the most potent things I heard you say was like, you just need to feel it more. You need to feel it fully. Like go deep in the pain. Like really feel it, because that's going to move the energy rather than resisting it. And that is such a powerful practice.
Yeah.
And for me, an example that came to mind is when I was moving through this breakup process with a partner, I actually hit up a very good friend who I knew could hold safe space for me. And he just gave me an hour to just go off and say anything I was feeling, and I knew I had a lot of love for this woman and still do to this day. And it was a beautiful relationship with its challenges, like many. But overall, like very positive relationship. I grew and transformed in a lot of ways, and I still care about this woman a lot and wish the best for her. But in that moment, there was a lot of anger coming up, especially since through this breakup process, she also was, starting to date somebody else. It was even all in full transparency, but basically I had a lot of energy that needed to be released. And so he just gave me the space to do that. I got to just scream and yell and basically tantrum and just say all the things that were coming up for me and all the ways I felt wronged and all the things that, made me angry about the whole process of that experience. And by the end of it, it was also towards this other man, this other human who, she was moving towards. And basically, once I got through that whole process, I felt clean coming out the other side, and I was able to actually sink back deeper into love. And I knew that anything that I said in that container in that hour, I was not like held or bound to that. And, I didn't have to actually mean anything I said in there, but the energy needed to move. And there was pieces of myself that felt threatened or wronged, or, my ego felt like it got poked or wounded in some way. And I just allowed the energy to flow. And by the end of that, I was at peace again.
Yeah.
And I could actually find genuine love for this human. But and the point I want to make is I wouldn't have been able to find that genuine love and care for these humans if I didn't allow myself to move that energy and to fully embrace what I was feeling, to feel it fully and express it in a safe container. Yeah. And that's what allowed me to come to actually even a deeper place of genuine love and acceptance and understanding. So I'm really all about feeling the thing fully, going deeper, having a safe space to express oneself. And that's what I honestly don't see enough of in the world today. Yeah. And one thing I feel called to create, which is also why I created the freestyle rap space that I met you in, is because I think that we need more spaces for authentic human expression across the range of emotions and experience.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
It's so powerful. Like I just look back on my own life and see how most of my years growing up, I had really no safe space to express a lot of what I was going through. I mean, God bless my mother for being there for me and my dad as well. But it's like outside of that, and there's only so much I could even share with her or felt safe to share with her. And I just really wish that for this next generation of humans and for ourselves, us young adults, evolving humans, into more and more, running this world and holding more external power, that we create more and more spaces for safe, authentic moving of energies and expressing things. And I love that that's, I know something that you also have a passion for, and DJing ecstatic dances and things like that. Like that's such a beautiful practice and space to move energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Also, screaming, like roaring, raging, letting that energy move through. We're told that we're not allowed to say, fuck that. We're told we're not allowed to be powerful. But that power, that anger is a healthy response to the suppression of emotion. So when emotion is suppressed for a long time, it might need that anger to help it to help the blocks to be burst through, so that the deeper rivers of grief can flow. And beneath that is just love and compassion and understanding.
And anger is also an energy of change and transformation.
Yeah,
it can
it's a
be
fire.
That, wow, like there's something that I need to utilize this energy for, and, use it for, creation or for sacred destruction of that which no longer serves.
Yeah, and I want to touch, I love that you brought your mother and father into this, that they supported you in this journey. Because a lot of this process is coming back to the reparenting, if you want to call it, or discovering the mother, the feminine, and the father, masculine energies within us. And that's how we actually mature from this species that's currently having a tantrum, this immature species that's like at the playground, like hitting itself, like hitting people, and just like, and everyone, he hit me, and just we're all just a bunch of toddlers just fighting with each other, and we're really being called to grow up and to mature and to be the ones to say, hey guys, quit fighting, like chill out, you're in the same, have fun, so on the playground, like, and just kind of snap people out, and so we can learn from this wisdom, because these parts within us are children, our literal child self that weren't allowed to fully emote in a loving container, because we are still uncovering how to hold space for that in our culture. But what we can learn from that wisdom is kids will have their tantrum, right? But we don't, hopefully, we don't let that define who the kid is. We know that the kid is a sweet, loving being behind that. So we can be that for ourselves. And when we're having a tantrum or an emotional process, we can be the presence that embraces that and allows it to move through, like you said, just patiently, like the father. This is our masculine aspect, and I'll refer to these, let's say the masculine as pure consciousness and just still beingness, and the mother as the more dynamic, loving and embracing, and the father is a bit more detached, space holding. And we can bring in the aspect of consciousness, find deeper unity within ourselves between these parts, rather than the masculine being something that says, no, stop, don't do that, boys don't cry. Like, the reason the father is doing that is because it is identified with its own anger, because it hasn't moved through that anger. So our emotions are not ourself. Our emotions become calcified, become a part of ourselves. They possess us when we actually haven't moved them through. And so anything in the world that reflects that, we will try to project that onto that. And so we believe that these emotions define these kids because they trigger in us those same emotions. And because we haven't learned to let those emotions move through us and discover the love behind them, the being behind them, because they haven't been held the space for us kids, then we fail to hold that space for kids to have their full process. And we immediately try to stop them because we don't know that we are something much deeper. So the key is that we are not these emotions. We are the space that holds these emotions. We're a space that holds space for them to move through. And not get identified, not make an identity out of anger, not make an identity out of sadness, or not make an identity, but truly in presence And we can also be there as love. We can be there as the mother and love and care for these parts and help them to calm down and relax. And if they're really throwing a fit and they don't want that, you can be like the father and really just observe and be present. And it's that ability to both be involved in and loving and caring for, and also to be somewhat detached and know ourselves to not, and just wait for that tantrum to die down and to move through its process. That eventually allows that inner child aspect to evolve into these aspects of ourselves, but we don't have the imprints from our environment necessarily of what that looks like, what that feels like. So we have to learn how to be that for ourselves, and it happens internally. And then when those emotions, those inner child repressed aspects, or those inner teenager, that angsty teenager repressed aspect, have a safe space in our consciousness and in our love to move through, then they begin to integrate, they begin to mature, they begin to evolve into more healthy expressions.
Mm. It's like we have to, what I hear in that is we need to honor and protect our emotions and nurture what's coming up inside of us without identifying with them.
Yeah.
It's like, and I love the term reparenting. It's something I've been really exploring a lot over the last couple of years. And I just really love how you speak to it in such like a, caring and nurturing tone of like, when there's a lot of pain, and I think this is kind of the last subject we can kind of wrap things up on, when there's a lot of pain inside, which I think just a lot of people are experiencing right now, a lot of pain, discomfort, confusion even. I think that's a really helpful perspective, one that's been really helpful for me at least, to view myself almost like from the observer as like a more parental energy, more of like a guardian protector energy, as like a little child. It's like, oh, like, look at this little child, like this child is so upset right now. It's like, how can I just like embrace this child? How can I love this child? How can I give this child space to feel and express and move through these energies and these emotions that are coming up that's like uncomfortable in their body? Like it probably is pretty intense, right? It's like probably a lot for this little body to hold that hasn't been, trained or refined
Creating
or cultivated.
Creating a safe container too. That's the inner father I hear you talking about is what is that safe container? Like how can we make sure that this is happening in a more in a way where that's not leaking out onto other people unnecessarily, but where that process can happen.
Yeah, protecting that child and their emotions and protecting others from that. It's like the father archetype is the structure creator, the boundary creator, and that's, I think, a whole nother topic.
For listeners out there, the father and the mother, they exist in all beings. They exist in women and men, both aspects. So just words to talk about different energies that work together.
Yeah, father, mother, masculine, feminine, energies that live within all of us, not necessarily specifically referring to gender of a human being, but just these energies that are kind of opposite but complementary.
Yeah. And they're the creative energies of all life.
Yeah. So I think that's like a really good piece to kind of end things on for this whole conversation about, where we're at right now in the world. And I think that is a really valuable perspective that you brought and that we got to chat about.
I want to touch on one more piece.
Yeah, no, I'll give you.
Sweet.
Yeah, for sure. But for me, that's a really powerful tool that I've used to help myself to navigate the chaoticness of the last couple of years, and what gives me strength and rootedness and a deep faith in my ability to navigate what is to come, because I don't know exactly what the next few years are going to look like, or even the next few months are going to look like. But I know that I've got myself, and I can parent myself. I can nurture myself. I can protect myself, and I can give myself the spaces I need to move through any energies that are coming up, and to ultimately feel them fully and allow the pain to dissolve, so that I can open to greater freedom, lightness, power, and ultimately service. The more I get to move through those energies and reclaim my power, the more of service I can actually be in such a chaotic world at this time.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And part of the medicine also, speaking of the masculine, so part of the medicine of the feminine is that it embraces, and it's like water, it flows and it embraces everything within it. And that's very beautiful and very soothing for parts that have felt isolated, have felt dry, have felt hardened in the masculine without a connection to the flow. There's also times where we can drown in our emotions and drown in the flow, and sometimes the masculine structure is helpful to snap us out of that, and because we're not just pure emotion, we're all these different aspects. We're not just feminine, we're also masculine. And sometimes it's okay to snap ourselves out of that and have a part of ourselves that says, okay, you've had a tantrum enough. Snap out of it, in a loving way, in a way that's hopefully integrated with the feminine. So it's not dishonoring that part. It holds space for it, but it knows when it's just drowning itself. It knows when it's actually not of service to its deeper potential for freedom. And so often we can also get lost or stuck in the feminine and the toxic feminine, not just in the toxic masculine as well. So the masculinity has a place within us where we can familiarize ourselves with equally on a deeper level of presence and purity and clarity than we've identified with masculine as we judge it to be as toxic. And also, the last piece I want to touch on is, and then there's the inner child that we've been talking about, the wounded child. But a beautiful and important resource for this world, for addressing this world and all of its darkness, is to liberate our own inner child, right? We have to be the change, what we wish to see in the world, we have to be. And so liberating our inner child and allowing our authentic joy, our authentic play, our authentic creativity and limitless thinking and enthusiasm and excitement to be unhinged, right? And we talked about our inner teenager as well, which is important, our rebel that might have not had its inner child fully honored, but we can create a society where the teenagers don't have to rebel when we truly make them feel connected in their sovereignty, when we truly give space for children to trust their wisdom and give them permission to just forget about the tantrum that they had 2 minutes ago and suddenly go running in the field in the next moment. Because if you notice kids, they can switch in a second. And oftentimes a lot of their processes that they're going through are mirroring things going on in their environments, unconsciously absorbing and reflecting that back, as well as deeper epigenetic ancestral woundings that are happening. Not to mention past life stuff, if you care for that conversation. So giving permission for ourselves to play and to be spontaneous and excited and limitlessly inspired by this world, and like, oh, something's wrong in the world. Oh, come to it with our innocence and our love. Come to it with our creativity and our playfulness. And as we do that, we can truly allow the seed of brilliance of creation within all of us that's been suppressed through adults projecting their relationship with their own inner child onto children outside of them, their lack of integration and liberation of that part within themselves onto children outside. We can hold space for the children of the world to begin to live lives that they don't have to heal from, that they don't have to project their unprocessed shit onto more children from. And so what's really important is how we treat children out there and how we allow our own inner child to be truly innocent, for us to know our innocence, to know that no matter what we're moving through, we're not bound, not to let those, train our own inner child to have its processes, but not identify with them. Because when a child isn't heard in its process and isn't given space to have that process calcifies and unconsciously becomes an unconscious part of it. It becomes a part of it because it's not enough space to move. So as we let our inner child have its processes more, it doesn't have to identify so much with these parts because they've moved through already, and more of the freedom can be here, the true play. And that's what we all need more permission to know. That's what we all need more of in this world. That's what we're trying to see. We want to see a world where everyone's happy, playful, thriving. And so we have to let ourselves be that, give ourselves the grace to be that, and to move from that infinite presence that isn't bound by any story of the past or what we should do or what this and that is, because that's how we create more of that in the world. That's how we have more access to our infinite creativity to come through us without our jadedness and without our cynicism and without our apathy and all the ways that constricts our life flow and creates disease in our being and projects a disharmonious world externally. That doesn't honor children and doesn't honor that tender seed of playfulness that just wants to love and be free and be happy in all of us. So we have to do that work of reparenting ourselves to allow that freedom to happen. And these parts do integrate into a happy family inside us. The masculine, the father, the mother, and the child within us. We can know all these as parts of ourselves. This is the divine trinity. This is creation. And it exists within us. It's the whole human family is within us. And these parts that seem separate, the man and the woman in the world and the children in the world, they're parts of us. And so as we get to know these parts in ourselves, they begin to integrate into a new kind of human where it doesn't treat what it perceives to be other as other. It treats these people with different bodies as aspects of itself. And this is the metamorphosis we're going through into an integrated being that is healed and whole and welcoming all parts, all aspects, shadow, light, masculine, feminine, destructive, creative, child and adult, and reflecting a world from their being and doing. And this is the opportunity that I see being here for us all today, to create that world from within, and from identifying as the creative force, through coming to terms with destruction, making way for new creation.
Yeah. One last piece I want to just reflect back of something I heard in there that is really powerful is, if I have a healthy relationship with my inner child, one, I'm not going to be causing harm to the children in the world because I am at peace with my own child within me, and I treat myself in such a compassionate and supportive way.
Thank God.
And two, when I'm showing up with that energy, if it's within my realm of my reality, I'm not going to allow that to happen in my circle, in my little world. Maybe I can't stop what's happening in another part of the world, across the country, or even in another city, but it's like, I think the more of us who can really heal that relationship within us, between the father, the mother, and the inner child, the more we're going to see healing in the world, and the less possible it even becomes for that type of abuse to happen, for that type of suffering to be perpetuated, because it's already healed and peaceful and harmonized within. It therefore cannot even externalize, because there's nothing of that nature to externalize. There's only a beingness that emanates that peace being brought more and more to the external, wherever that being goes.
Yeah,
that's really, really powerful. Thank you for just like finishing and tying that all together. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, and that's the piece of self. I hear self-responsibility in there. Like, we have to take self-responsibility for ourselves. We can't necessarily do everything for the whole world, but we are, by taking self-responsibility for ourselves, because we are the world. All that we have is ourself.
That's like the truth of like one human can change the world.
Yeah.
Because when you do authentically come to that place of healing within, you are not going to perpetuate that type of suffering anymore. And anyone and anything in your vicinity is going to be less and less likely to be able to exhibit those harmful behavior patterns as well.
Not to mention your children will be a whole nother level of amazingness.
You've just broken that cycle for them now that they're on a whole nother level starting out, because that type of abuse or suffering no longer exists within the DNA and the lineage that you're passing on to them. What a beautiful gift for future generations.
And what we're doing right now is giving birth to a new humanity together. We're all giving birth to a new humanity. And that's the vision of what I'm seeing is happening right now. Like, really, so many people around the world are doing that work internally to no longer pass that on. And so it really starts in the self. It starts in the home. And then that's how it goes local, and that's how it goes global. And there's so many children coming, and every generation breaks a bit more out of the box from the last one. And the last Roaring 20s 100 years ago really did that, the last 20s, a decade ago.
And each generation has the opportunity. I was just talking to my mom earlier today, how she experienced certain cycles within her family that she was like, not me. Like, I see that. I don't like that. It stops with me. And I'm not going to continue this pattern. I'm going to hold a higher standard. And I think that's what we're all called to do at this time, is to say, this ends with me. And the more of us that can do that, the quicker and smoother I believe this transformation can occur, and the smoother we can go through this metamorphosis to completion. And I just want to end with just a big thank you for you coming on and having this beautiful and powerful conversation that, honestly was uncomfortable at moments, because this isn't easy stuff to talk about, like the energy that we're tapping into. and I felt really activated at certain moments. It was really interesting, just because of how sensitive I think these topics are. And I think you just bring such a beautiful energy and perspective to approach these challenging conversations that I can feel even just having this conversation has changed me in some significant way inside of myself, even if it's a small way. Like, nothing is small, nothing is insignificant.
Thank you for speaking to those parts of you that were activated during this, and because no part wants to be left behind or abandoned, and that's the whole, that, if anything, is the ideal that I want to share. Is everything is welcome, and so thank you for making space to integrate and bridge these different perspectives, because we often say that spirituality is dissociated from reality, right? And it's a reflection of how adults, or this higher transcendent aspect, is dissociated from the inner child, is from the child in the world. I think this is a time of bringing it all together and knowing that there's space for everything, and that these transcendent ideas are complementary to the practical work of being human here on earth right now. And that's what I think is really important to see and to feel and to embody and to experience between us too, which is not easy, like you said. It's quite the creative, messy journey, but everything can be used to bring more harmony and understanding. And at the end of the day, even just for ourselves, even if it's just a fuck that, find that for ourselves, that's enough. And then the world takes care of itself from there. So, yeah.
Beautiful, brother.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me here, brother. Thank you for, wow. We covered a lot of beautiful ground, and I'm just super, super honored to be given a platform to bounce some beautiful ideas that I think are really, really not yet mainstream, but going there at this time. So thanks for being a pioneer and space holder, and just bringing so much love and balance and integration, and I feel this happening right now through us, and I think it's time. So may we be proof for those who need to hear it that this is what this time is here for us to. to have the conversations that bring more healing and more unity and more presence and beingness within us. And speak to the uncomfortable things and help them be a part of the conversation rather than something that we cast off into the shadows and create more dissonance with, but bring that dissonance in and learn how to dynamically dance with it. So thanks for being a freaking awesome place for this amazing next level new earth shit to integrate in.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be here with you.
Absolutely, brother. It's a pleasure to have you. And you just reminded me, so the initial tagline I came up for this podcast is, what was it? The next evolution of human consciousness. And that's really the focus of the show. And it's called What the Freak, which is a question, right? Because it's all about curiosity and inquisition. Like, we're inquiring into life. We're inquiring into what's going on here and who are we and what's happening and how can we better navigate this and all those kind of questions. And I just really appreciate how in alignment we are on this and just how much we're able to connect these perspectives and weave them together. Like, I truly feel how important this kind of work is, and I appreciate your courage and willing to lean into this conversation with me today and your courage to go deeper within yourself on this journey that is not easy in many regards. And I just also want to end with a big thank you for everyone listening. And
it's getting easier than ever before, especially having one another to do it with, to know we're not alone.
Yeah, I'm experiencing more and more ease in the journey, I like to say. I'd say in certain ways it's still not easy, but there's a lot more ease and support that I have that it's turning into something else.
And facing the challenges makes the challenges become easy, because when we try to resist them, it creates more challenge.
Yeah.
And that's the invitation of this time, I think, is to embrace the challenge as a portal into ease rather than more resistance.
Yeah, and just big shout out to everyone doing the work out there. Thank you for choosing to say fuck that and breaking generational cycles and saying the pattern stops with me. Like, it's so important, and I really just appreciate every being out there. It's like, I'm only one human being, and yes, I am doing the work, and yes, you are doing the work, and we need as many people as possible to do this type of work, have these kind of conversations. So my final encouragement is just, what conversations can you have with the people in your life? In what ways can you support yourself to connect with that inner child and do the healing work within yourself, come to peace and harmony within yourself, so you can actually be of even greater service to the world around you.
And that service piece is huge, because that's how we grow up out of our immaturity, is when we start to live for a cause that's beyond us. That's the wisdom of the father and mother, is that they live their life in service to their children. It's because they know it's an extension of themselves. And so a big way to snap out of our immaturity and realize what time it is, realize how we are no longer toddlers, is through living our lives in service to what we see in the world that lights us up, that makes us see what's happening in the world as if they're doing that to our children or to our brother or sister, and to trust that wisdom that wants to fucking like rage and is inspired with passion, and let that open us up into more creativity. Like, this is really a time, I think, to really be creative and passionate and audacious with our capacity to do that, and to snap us out of our it's all about me, because there is a level of needing to do the inner work in order to be able to meet that life in a good way that's not perpetuating that disconnect and dissociation. And there's also a way that happens in the fire of truly living in service to something beyond just the inner process, and realizing that there is no difference between the inner and outer, so we can also bring healing to ourselves, realizing who we truly are in service to the world, because we are just vessels for nature. We are just channels for life. And all these knots within us are places where we haven't let ourselves just have life move through. And when these emotions can be moved through, that might be blocking life from moving through, then there's just love and service and peace and harmony. So this is an invitation to also trust that things can be more easy when we stop being tyrannical and fighting with ourselves, tyrannical to ourselves, fighting with ourselves, being oppressive to ourselves, being violent to ourselves, and give space for the inner child's wisdom to guide us beyond the edges and into the maturity, the self-responsibility that lives life on our own authentic terms, and finding that authenticity that is of service, finding that authenticity that is of love, that does feel the darkness of this world, that does feel the darkness within ourselves, and sacrifices our selfishness in service to creating something that works better for all of us.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, everyone, for listening in.
And trusting it can be easy. Trusting it can be easier than we've known it can be. That's my invitation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. We will catch you guys next time. And have a beautiful day, night, morning, evening, whenever it is. Love you.
Thank you so much for being here, everyone.